They mocked the homeless man. He returned in a limo, the secret millionaire and stories. Have you ever stared at the faces around you, your colleagues, your family, the people you've built your life with, and wondered if they truly see you for who you are, or just what you represent? What if you lost everything tomorrow, not through circumstance, but by choice, to deliberately strip away the illusions? Who do you think would still be by your side? Who would genuinely care, and who would merely melt away like snow in the summer sun, revealing the barren ground beneath? I decided not to wait to find out. I became a beggar to learn the truth about my legacy, my staff, and my own blood, and the truth was not just shocking, it was utterly heartbreaking, yet profoundly illuminating. Why would a man with millions, a man who built an empire from the ground up, pretend to be homeless? The question itself sounds like the opening line of a cynical fable, doesn't it? Yet, for me, Octavian Sterling, founder of the renowned Sterling Hospitality, it was a question born from a deep, gnawing disillusionment. I had spent 72 years accumulating wealth, building a brand synonymous with luxury and impeccable service. The Sterling Grand, my flagship hotel, stood as a testament to my ambition, a glittering beacon in the heart of the city. I still remember the thrill of those early days, the sweat and sleepless nights in a cramped office, the sheer grit it took to transform a single, struggling inn into an international hospitality giant. Every brick laid, every service refined, was infused with a passion for creating places where people felt truly welcomed, truly cared for. That was the dream, the core of Sterling Hospitality. But paradoxically, with every soaring success, every added zero to my net worth, I felt an increasing isolation. My world, once vibrant with the challenge of creation, had become a sterile echo chamber. Conversations revolved around profit margins, market shares, and strategic acquisitions. The human element, the genuine connection that had once fueled my passion, seemed to have evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating pursuit of the next big deal. I'd attend lavish galas, surrounded by influential figures, yet feel utterly alone, the glittering chandeliers reflecting a profound emptiness within me. I'd listen to my executives debate cost-cutting measures, their voices devoid of any consideration for the impact on the staff or the guest experience. It was as if the soul had been slowly siphoned out of the very entity I had poured my life into. I saw my empire, once a testament to hard work and genuine service, on the verge of becoming a monument to greed, a gilded cage for its inhabitants. My staff, or rather, the upper echelons of my corporate structure, seemed to mimic this detachment. My general manager, Alastair Thorne, was a shark in a tailored suit, brilliant with numbers, utterly devoid of warmth. I had initially been drawn to his ruthless efficiency, his ability to optimize operations and drive profits, qualities I once believed were essential for growth. He had risen quickly through the ranks, always focused, always composed, never letting emotion cloud his judgment. But in recent years, his efficiency had curdled into a chilling indifference. I'd observed him dismiss a long-serving employee for a minor infraction, rationalizing it with a cold calculation of redundancy, rather than considering the human cost. He saw the hotel as a machine, its staff as cogs, and its guests as data points on a spreadsheet. And then there was my grandnephew, Cassian Sterling, whom I had, perhaps foolishly, considered as a potential successor. He possessed the family name, the inherited charm, and a devastatingly arrogant sense of entitlement. I had tried, truly, to mentor him, to instill in him the values of hard work and respect that had built our empire. I'd invited him to charity events, pushed him to work various roles within our hotels, hoping to foster a sense of responsibility. But he saw the Sterling Empire not as a testament to hard work and vision, but as his birthright, a golden platter served up for his enjoyment. I remembered a particularly galling incident during a staff appreciation dinner. Cassian, barely tolerating the presence of lower-level employees, openly scoffed at a kitchen porter's dream of opening a small cafe, dismissing it as quaint but unrealistic. He then proceeded to loudly discuss his latest luxury car acquisition, completely oblivious to the discomfort and quiet resentment he sowed. He epitomized everything I had come to fear about the future of my company. I watched them, these ambitious young men, from behind the polished mahogany of my boardroom, and I saw a reflection of a corporate world I no longer recognized, a world stripped bare of genuine empathy. They managed assets, not people. They saw guests as revenue streams, not individuals seeking comfort. And the idea of giving back, of fostering a culture of true care, seemed to be a foreign concept to them. I felt a profound emptiness, a void that no amount of luxury could fill. My empire felt hollow, my legacy teetering on the precipice of becoming nothing more than a monument to greed. I craved something real, something unvarnished. I wanted to see the true character of those around me, stripped of the pretense that wealth and power often demand. How would they treat someone who could offer them nothing in return? How would they react to a person who was utterly invisible, a burden, a blight on their meticulously curated image? And so, the plan was born. A social experiment of my own design, meticulously crafted to peel back the layers of polite society and expose the raw truth. I decided to shed my identity, to become someone utterly unrecognizable, someone who represented the very antithesis of wealth and influence. I would go undercover as a frail, disheveled homeless man, a ghost haunting the very streets my empire dominated. My chosen observation post. The very entrance of the Sterling Grand, my crown jewel. It was audacious, dangerous even, but I was driven by an unshakable need for clarity. I needed to know if the humanity I believed in still existed within the walls of my own creation, or if it had been entirely consumed by the cold fire of ambition. I spent weeks preparing, not just on my physical transformation, the worn clothes I meticulously soiled, the matted hair I refused to comb, the days without shaving that left my face a tangled mess, the subtle makeup to age my features and deepen the shadows under my eyes, making me look perpetually weary and ill, but also on my mindset. It wasn't enough to look the part, I had to feel it. I had to become Octavian Sterling the pauper, not Octavian Sterling the billionaire playing dress-up. I studied the mannerisms, the way of speaking, the posture of those who lived on the streets, observing with a keen, almost scientific eye. I practiced the slump of the shoulders, the averted gaze, the way to make myself seem smaller, less threatening, utterly insignificant. I arranged for my absence to be explained away as a wellness retreat, a common enough excuse for a man of my age and status. Only my most trusted, long-serving lawyer, old Arthur Finch, was privy to the full extent of my plan. Arthur, a man of unwavering loyalty who had been with me since the early days, looked at me as if I'd finally lost my mind, his usual stoic demeanor crumbling into genuine concern. Octavian, he'd pleaded, his voice cracking, this is madness. You'll catch your death. What if someone recognizes you? I had simply shaken my head, my resolve unyielding. Then the experiment fails, Arthur. But I need to know. I must know. He finally conceded, but with a heavy heart, extracting promises that I would check in regularly through a secure, anonymous channel he set up. The first night was an assault on my senses, a brutal awakening to a reality I had only ever glimpsed from tinted car windows. The cold seeped into my bones with a malicious persistence, mocking the designer thermal wear hidden beneath my ragged layers. The hard, unforgiving pavement was a stark contrast to my silk sheets, and the constant hum of the city that I had always associated with vitality now felt like a relentless, indifferent roar. The smells were overwhelming, exhaust fumes, damp concrete, uncollected refuse, and the faint, unsettling odor of desperation. I huddled in the shadows, near the service entrance of the Sterling Grand, a stark contrast to the glittering lobby doors where chauffeurs deposited their wealthy patrons. My goal was simple, observe. Observe the staff as they came and went, observe the guests, but most importantly, observe Alastair Thorne and Cassian Sterling. I wanted to see their true colors when confronted with someone who represented everything they despised, poverty, decrepitude, and a perceived lack of value. I was about to uncover truths I never expected, truths that would shake the very foundation of my world and force me to redefine what true legacy meant. So, how did my ambitious staff and heir apparent treat the poor old uncle, who suddenly appeared on their doorstep, albeit in disguise? The initial days were a blur of discomfort, a relentless assault on my senses and my pride. The cold seeped into my bones, the hunger was a constant companion, a hollow ache that settled deep in my stomach, and the feeling of invisibility was perhaps the most profound. I was a phantom, an afterthought, a piece of urban debris to be ignored. From my vantage point near the Sterling Grand, I watched my empire hum with a life I was no longer a part of, or so they thought. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, sharper than any hunger pang. I learned quickly the unspoken rules of the street, where to find a scrap of cardboard for insulation, how to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible, how to read the fleeting glances of passers-by, pity, disgust, or most often, nothing at all. I occasionally shared a knowing glance with other rough sleepers, a silent acknowledgement of our shared predicament, a fleeting moment of camaraderie in a world that largely ignored us. They were wary, as was I, but there was an honesty in their eyes that I hadn't seen in the boardroom for years. Alastair Thorne, the general manager, was one of the first to truly test my resolve. He was a creature of habit, arriving precisely at 7 a.m. each morning, impeccably dressed, a brisk efficiency in his stride. I would often be sitting on a low wall, trying to make myself as unobtrusive as possible, when he would emerge from his sleek black sedan, the chauffeur holding the door with practiced deference. At first, he simply ignored me, his gaze sweeping over my huddled form as if I were part of the scenery, no more significant than a discarded coffee cup. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating when assessing hotel operations, seemed to possess a remarkable blind spot for anything that didn't contribute to the bottom line. I remember one morning, a particularly biting wind whipped through the street. I had managed to acquire a tattered newspaper to cover my legs, and a gust of wind sent a page fluttering into his path. Thorne stopped, not to help, but to glare, his expensive leather briefcase clutched tight. "You," he snapped, his voice sharp, devoid of any discernible emotion beyond irritation, as if I were a particularly stubborn piece of litter. "Move along. You're a blight on the hotel's image. This isn't a shelter." His words, delivered with chilling indifference, cut deeper than the cold. He saw me as an obstacle, a stain on his perfectly polished facade, not a human being. I watched him stalk away, his expensive shoes crunching on the pavement, leaving me to gather my scraps of dignity. On another occasion, just a few days later, I heard him instructing a junior security guard, a nervous young man, "Get rid of that vagrant. He's scaring away potential guests. I don't care how you do it, just make sure he's gone by lunch." The guard, looking uncomfortable and glancing nervously in my direction, merely nodded, but made no move towards me, thankfully. Thorne's utter lack of humanity was not a flaw, it was a practiced art. He was a manager of reputation, not a leader of people. He had mastered the art of seeing through people, of reducing them to their economic utility. Cassian Sterling, my grandnephew, proved to be an even more painful revelation. He was younger, perhaps in his late 20s, brimming with an inherited arrogance that grated on my nerves even when I was Octavian Sterling. As the homeless man, I was simply beneath his notice, an insect to be brushed away. He usually arrived later in the morning, often with a different luxury car each day, a new sports car, a gleaming SUV, always a testament to his unchecked spending. He would exit with a swagger, his phone perpetually pressed to his ear, laughing loudly at some unheard joke, completely oblivious to the world around him. I often saw him near the main entrance, where I occasionally positioned myself, hoping for a different perspective, perhaps a glimmer of the young boy I once thought had potential. One afternoon, while I was sitting near a planter, shivering despite the midday sun, trying to warm my numbed fingers, Cassian emerged from the hotel, laughing with two equally well-dressed associates. He stopped abruptly when he saw me, his laughter dying on his lips, replaced by a sneer of pure disgust. "Ugh, look at this," he muttered, loud enough for me to hear, gesturing vaguely in my direction with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Can't they keep these things away from the entrance? It's bad for business." His companions chuckled, nodding in agreement, their faces mirroring his contempt. "Honestly, Uncle Octavian would never tolerate such a mess," Cashin added, completely oblivious to the bitter irony of my presence. He then deliberately veered widely around me, as if my very presence was contagious, a source of disease, before continuing his conversation about a lavish dinner reservation he was planning. My own blood, so blind to anything beyond their own reflection, so utterly devoid of compassion. It was a stark, brutal lesson in the true cost of unchecked privilege, a confirmation of my worst fears about his character. He hadn't just forgotten the values I tried to teach him, he had actively scorned them. But then, amidst the chilling indifference and outright cruelty, a different light began to flicker. Her name was Elara Vance, and she was a young kitchen porter. I had noticed her almost immediately, a small, unassuming figure who moved with quiet efficiency, often burdened with heavy trays or rubbish bags, always entering through the service entrance. She had a kind face, framed by dark hair often escaping its bun, and eyes that seemed to carry a gentle weariness, the kind that comes from long hours and hard work. Unlike Thorne or Cashin, she actually saw me. Not as a blight, not as an inconvenience, but as a person. I had seen her interact with other staff members, always with a quiet respect, a small smile even when clearly exhausted. She was a quiet observer, much like myself, though her observations were born of necessity, not a grand experiment. The first time she acknowledged me, I almost didn't believe it. I was slumped against the wall, trying to shield myself from a particularly biting wind, my stomach rumbling painfully. Elara was on her lunch break, sitting on a low step near the service entrance, unwrapping a simple sandwich. She glanced at me, her brow furrowed with a flicker of concern, a momentary hesitation that spoke volumes. Then, with a quick, almost imperceptible movement, she broke off half of her sandwich, a simple cheese and tomato, and placed it discreetly on the wall beside me, just out of sight of the security cameras. She didn't say a word, didn't make a show of it, just offered a fleeting, gentle smile before resuming her meal, her gaze dropping quickly to her hands. My heart, which had felt like a stone for days, gave a surprising lurch. It wasn't just the food, it was the act itself, the quiet, unassuming kindness, the acknowledgement of my existence when everyone else pretended I was invisible. It was a lifeline. Over the next few days, this small ritual repeated itself. Sometimes it was a half sandwich, sometimes an apple, once even a small, lukewarm cup of tea she must have smuggled out, carefully wrapped in a napkin to keep it warm. Each time, it was done with the same quiet discretion, the same gentle smile, as if she were sharing a secret with a trusted friend. Her eyes would briefly meet mine, a silent communication that transcended words. I noticed her own uniform was worn, her hands often chapped from dishwashing, and I knew her own means were modest. Her generosity was not born of abundance, but of a deep well of empathy. One particularly cold afternoon, after having left a small container of what looked like leftover stew, she sat down on the step near me, seemingly for a brief respite. "It's going to be a rough night, isn't it?" she murmured, her voice soft, laced with genuine concern, her breath visible in the frigid air. Are you okay out here?" I managed a raspy, "Thank you, miss. You're very kind." My voice, unused for days except for an occasional cough, felt foreign. She paused, then looked directly at me, her eyes filled with a compassion that felt like a warm embrace. "My name's Elara," she said. "And you look like you could use a friend." We spoke for a few minutes, simple words about the weather, about the city, about nothing and everything. She didn't ask personal questions, didn't judge, didn't preach. She just offered conversation, a moment of human connection that felt more precious than any luxury I had ever known. She shared a small story about her grandmother, who had faced hard times, and how it taught her never to judge a book by its cover. It was a profound moment of shared humanity. It was a stark, almost blinding contrast. While some built walls of disdain, others offered bridges of pure, unselfish kindness. Thorne and Cashin, with their wealth and power, had shown themselves to be utterly impoverished in spirit. Ilara, with her meager earnings and demanding job, had proven herself to be richer than any of them could ever comprehend. My experiment was working, but the results were shattering my preconceptions in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about identifying the bad apples, it was about discovering the unexpected wells of goodness. I wondered if anyone else, anyone at all, would show a flicker of humanity beyond Ilara. A few days later, a young bellhop, rushing out for a delivery, almost bumped into me. He stopped, offered a hurried apology, and without a second thought, pressed a crumpled dollar bill into my hand before disappearing into the traffic. It was a small gesture, perhaps born more of habit than deep empathy, but it registered. A tiny ripple in the vast ocean of indifference. But it was Ilara's sustained, quiet kindness that truly illuminated the darkness. And how much longer could I maintain this charade, knowing the truth I now held? The weight of their cruelty and her kindness pressed down on me, urging me towards an inevitable conclusion. My heart ached for what I had seen, but a new resolve began to solidify within me. But every game has an end, right? And this particular game, a brutal test of human character, had reached its crescendo. I had seen enough. The indifference of many, the casual cruelty of a few, and the breathtaking, incandescent kindness of one. My heart was heavy with sorrow for what I had witnessed, but also alight with a fierce determination. The time for observation was over, the time for revelation was at hand. The decision was final, and the consequences, I knew, would echo through the lives of everyone involved. The setting I chose for my grand reveal was meticulously planned for maximum impact. It was the annual Sterling Hospitality Board meeting, held in the opulent boardroom on the top floor of the Sterling Grand itself. This wasn't just any meeting, it was scheduled to address the future direction of the company, a euphemism for discussing my succession plan and Alastair Thorne's aggressive expansion proposals. Cashin Sterling was, of course, expected to be in attendance, observing, learning, and undoubtedly plotting his ascent, perhaps already envisioning his name at the top of the Sterling letterhead. The day of the reveal, I felt a strange mix of apprehension and exhilaration. I left my disguise behind, shedding the layers of grime and despair that had clung to me for weeks. A long, hot bath, the water almost scalding, cleansed not just my skin but my spirit, washing away the indignity. A shave that felt like a reunion with myself, revealing the familiar contours of my face beneath the matted beard. Then the transformation began. My personal stylist, oblivious to my recent escapade, had laid out a bespoke charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie that felt like a symbol of reclaiming my identity. As I looked in the mirror, the frail, disheveled old man was gone, replaced by Octavian Sterling, sharp, formidable, and utterly in control. My eyes, which had learned to observe with a quiet desperation, now blazed with a renewed purpose, a clarity born of hardship. The reflection staring back at me was not just a billionaire, but a man profoundly changed. My arrival was orchestrated with precision. I eschewed the usual discreet entrance and instead requested a motorcade, not for show, but for effect, a clear statement of my return to power. A convoy of 3 sleek black sedans, gleaming under the afternoon sun, pulled up to the main entrance of the Sterling Grand, the very entrance where I had sat, a beggar, just days before. The security detail, who had been ordered to ensure no disruptions, but clearly bewildered by the sudden change in plans, held the doors open with a deference that was almost sickeningly familiar. As I stepped out, my gaze swept over the polished brass and gleaming marble, a world I had momentarily left behind, a world I was now reclaiming with a quiet, steely resolve. I took a deep breath, the scent of expensive polish and fresh flowers a stark contrast to the city's grime. The boardroom was a tableau of corporate power, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of expensive coffee. Thorne was presenting his quarterly report, his voice smooth and confident, projecting an image of unshakable competence, his PowerPoint slides filled with impressive growth charts. Cashin sat to his right, a smirk playing on his lips, occasionally interjecting with a comment designed to impress, perhaps even to subtly undermine Thorne, eager to stake his own claim. The other board members, a collection of seasoned executives and longtime associates, listened attentively, occasionally nodding in agreement, their faces reflecting various degrees of interest and weariness. Hilaire Vance, as a kitchen porter, would, of course, not be in the boardroom. However, I had made arrangements. Just as Thorne was about to move to the next slide, a slide detailing his aggressive expansion plans into new markets, the grand, mahogany double doors burst open. The sudden, jarring noise silenced the room instantly, and all heads turned, startled. My trusted lawyer, Arthur Finch, entered first, his face a mask of grim determination, a hint of concern still lingering in his wise old eyes. He held the door open, and then I walked in. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, almost deafening. Thorne's voice died in his throat, a soundless gasp escaping his lips, his eyes wide with disbelief, his face draining of all color, turning a sickly shade of gray. Cashin's confident smirk vanished, replaced by a look of abject horror, as if he had seen a ghost, or perhaps a specter of his own impending doom. The other board members gasped, some sputtering, others simply staring, utterly dumbfounded, their coffee cups frozen midair. They had been told I was away on a wellness retreat, a carefully constructed lie to ensure my absence went unquestioned. My unexpected, dramatic return, looking healthier and more formidable than ever, was a shockwave that reverberated through the very core of their carefully constructed reality. I walked to the head of the long table, my gaze sweeping over each person, lingering on Thorne and Cashin, allowing their terror to fully bloom, watching the dawning comprehension of their fate unfold on their faces. "Gentlemen," I began, my voice clear and resonant, carrying the weight of command that had built my empire. "And soon, Ms. Vance, I believe you all know me. Or perhaps," I paused, my eyes locking onto Thorne's, then Cashin's, my voice dropping slightly, "you thought you did." Thorne stammered, his usual composure utterly shattered, his hands trembling visibly on the polished table. "Mr. Sterling." "Sir. We thought you were on retreat. What is the meaning of this?" He was clutching at straws, his voice a desperate, panicked whisper. "The meaning, Mr. Thorne," I replied, my voice dangerously calm, each word deliberate and precise, "is quite simple. I have been on a retreat, of sorts. A retreat into the very heart of my own empire, to observe its true pulse, its genuine character, from a perspective none of you would ever willingly embrace." I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table, my gaze unblinking. "For the past 3 weeks, I have been living on the streets, right outside this very hotel, as a homeless man. I became the invisible man, the blight, the inconvenience you so readily dismiss." A collective gasp swept through the room, louder this time, a tremor of shock passing through the assembled executives. Thorne looked like he was about to faint, his eyes darting frantically around the room, as if seeking an escape. Cashin stared at me, his mouth agape, utterly speechless, the blood drained from his face. "I observed much," I continued, my voice growing colder, harder with each accusation. "I observed a general manager who, instead of offering a moment of compassion to a fellow human being, saw only a blight on the hotel's image and ordered security to get rid of me. I observed a grandnephew who, instead of recognizing even a glimmer of shared humanity, openly expressed disgust and contempt, circling widely to avoid my perceived contamination. I watched their faces contort with a mixture of terror and dawning comprehension, the realization of their profound error hitting them with brutal force. You both saw a worthless nobody. You saw an inconvenience. You saw something beneath your notice, someone who could offer you nothing, and thus deserve nothing. Thorne finally found his voice, a desperate, pathetic whisper. Sir, I had no idea. I assure you, it was a misunderstanding. I was just trying to maintain the hotel's standards. He tried to regain his composure, to revert to his corporate persona, but the mask had fallen away completely. Standards, Mr. Thorne, I interjected, cutting him off with a look that would freeze fire, a look that conveyed absolute authority and unyielding disappointment, that do not include basic human decency. Is that the new sterling hospitality standard, one devoid of common humanity? Cashin, pale and trembling, finally managed to stammer, his voice thin with fear, Uncle Octavian, I couldn't have known. I thought you were just a common vagrant. I swear, if I had known it was you. His excuse was just as damning as his actions. Indeed, Cashin, I said, my voice laced with a bitter irony that cut deeper than any shout. And how do we treat common vagrants in the Sterling family? Is that the lesson your upbringing has taught you? Is that the legacy you believe I built? Just then, as per my instructions, Arthur Finch opened a side door, and a young woman was ushered in by a confused security guard. It was Elara Vance, still in her kitchen porter uniform, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion, clutching her hands in front of her. She looked at me, then at the shocked, pale faces around the table, then back at me, a flicker of recognition, then utter bewilderment, dawning in her kind eyes as she processed the impossible. However, I continued, turning my gaze to Elara, a gentle smile touching my lips for the first time that morning, a profound warmth replacing the sternness. I also observed a young woman who, despite her own modest means and demanding work, shared her meager lunch with a stranger. Who offered a kind word, a moment of genuine human connection, a simple, unassuming smile, when everyone else looked away, or looked with contempt. She saw not a vagrant, but a person in need. She saw humanity where others saw only inconvenience, or nothing at all. Elara, overwhelmed, her face flushing, looked like she might faint, her eyes welling up. The room was utterly silent, the weight of my words pressing down on everyone, particularly Thorne and Cashin, whose faces were now masks of pure dread, their futures collapsing around them. My game had ended, and the truth, raw and undeniable, was laid bare for all to see. The contrast was absolute, the judgment unequivocal. The aftermath of my revelation was swift and decisive, a whirlwind of consequences that left no doubt about the future of Sterling hospitality. The gasps and whispers that followed my speech quickly gave way to a chilling silence as I began to dictate my terms. The power in that room, which had seemed so distributed amongst the board members, now resided solely with me. I was the architect of this test, and I would be the dispenser of justice. There was no room for debate, no space for pleas. The truth I had unearthed was too stark, too absolute. Alastair Thorne, who had prided himself on his impeccable control, his unshakable composure, was utterly broken. Mr. Sterling, please, he pleaded, his voice hoarse, cracking, his face a mottled red, tears threatening to spill from his eyes. I've dedicated years to this company. My family depends on me. I swear I didn't know it was you. I was just doing my job, maintaining standards. He tried to appeal to my business acumen, my supposed understanding of maintaining image, of the ruthless demands of the market. But his words rang hollow, stripped of all credibility. His job, as I now understood it, had been to dehumanize. Your dedication, Mr. Thorne, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, hard as granite, was to profit, not to people. Your loyalty was to your own advancement, not to the values I founded this company upon. You failed the most fundamental test of all, empathy. You saw a human being in distress and chose to see a problem for your bottom line. And for that, there is no place for you in Sterling hospitality. I turned to Arthur Finch, who stood ready, a somber expression on his face. "Mr. Finch, please ensure that Mr. Thorne's contract is terminated immediately. He is to be escorted from the premises and is no longer welcome in any Sterling establishment. His severance package will reflect a termination for gross misconduct and moral turpitude, with all due legal consequences applied." Thorne's jaw dropped, the words, but my career. My reputation, escaping him in a desperate, almost incoherent babbling. His pleas escalated into a wail, but I simply held up a hand, cutting him off. The board members, pale and unnerved, offered no protest. They had witnessed his cruelty firsthand, even if unknowingly, and now they saw the swift, uncompromising justice. Thorne was led away by 2 security guards, his once proud posture slumped, his tailored suit now seeming to hang off him like a shroud, the very image of a broken man. His downfall was public, immediate, and utterly devastating. I knew his reputation in the cutthroat hospitality industry would be in tatters, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms for years to come. He had built his kingdom on ice, and it had melted beneath him. Then, I turned my attention to Cassian Sterling. He stood frozen, his face a mask of utter despair, the arrogance he usually projected completely stripped away, revealing a scared, entitled boy. "Cassian," I began, my voice tinged with a profound sadness that surprised even myself. "This was, after all, my own blood. You are my grandnephew, my blood. For years, I considered you a potential heir, someone to carry on the Sterling name, to embody the future of this company. I tried to teach you, to guide you. But you have shown me a heart devoid of compassion, a spirit consumed by entitlement and contempt for those less fortunate, for anyone you deemed beneath you. My legacy is not merely about wealth, it is about the values it represents, the people it serves, and the empathy it fosters. It is about a moral compass, which you clearly lack." Cassian started to stammer, "Uncle, I was only joking. I didn't mean it. I was just trying to impress those other guys, to show them I was tough, that I could handle the business." "Impress them with your disdain for humanity?" I challenged, my gaze unwavering, unflinching. "My legacy, Cassian, will not be built on such hollow foundations, on such a bankrupt spirit. I hereby revoke any and all considerations of your succession. Furthermore, any provisions for you in my will, beyond a modest sum to ensure you do not starve, are nullified. You will no longer be associated with Sterling hospitality in any capacity. My blood you may be, but my heir you are not. You have inherited the name, but not the character required to bear its weight." Cassian crumpled, his face buried in his hands, loud sobs racking his body. He was disinherited, stripped of the future he had so confidently assumed was his, the golden platter snatched away. The weight of his own actions, revealed so brutally, crushed him. He too, was escorted out, his pleas and desperate apologies echoing down the hallway, unanswered, the sound of his broken pride a stark counterpoint to Thorne's fury. The silence he left behind was heavy, filled with the reverberations of a dynasty dramatically altered, a clear message sent to everyone in that room. Finally, I turned to Elara Vance. She stood wide-eyed, trembling slightly, utterly overwhelmed by the dramatic turn of events, a lone figure in a corporate arena. Her presence in the boardroom was, in itself, an anomaly, and she looked utterly out of place amidst the mahogany and polished brass, a beacon of genuine humanity in a den of calculated ambition. "Elara," I said, softening my voice, a genuine smile replacing the sternness that had dominated my expression. "You may not realize it, but for the past 3 weeks, you have been my lifeline. Your small acts of kindness, your willingness to see a human being where others saw only an obstacle, rekindled a faith I feared I had lost. You embody the true spirit of hospitality, the genuine care that built this company, and that will define its future. You are a reminder of what we should always strive to be." Elara stammered, her voice barely a whisper, "Mr. Sterling. I saw you were hungry. It was nothing. Anyone would have done it. It was everything, Elara, I corrected gently, my gaze full of admiration. It was everything. It showed me your true character. And true character, my dear, is the most valuable asset of all. It is the bedrock upon which genuine success is built. I paused, letting my words sink in, not just for her, but for the silently observing board members. Effective immediately, Elara, you are promoted from kitchen porter to head of community relations and staff well-being. This will be a new department, one I intend to invest heavily in, one that will embody the true values of sterling hospitality, ensuring that the heart of this company beats with compassion. You will oversee all our outreach programs, staff support initiatives, and ensure that genuine empathy becomes the cornerstone of our company culture. Your starting salary will reflect the importance of this role, and I will personally fund your further education in business management and social welfare, should you choose to pursue it, to equip you with all the tools you need to lead this crucial transformation. Elara's eyes, already wide, welled up with tears, glistening in the bright boardroom lights. She didn't speak, simply nodded, overwhelmed, a small, grateful sob escaping her lips, her hands rising to cover her mouth. It wasn't just about the money or the title, it was about the profound validation of her pure spirit, the recognition that her kindness had a value far beyond anything money could buy. I could see the potential, the genuine heart that would now infuse my company with the humanity it desperately needed. It was not just a reward, it was an investment in the future, a future built on compassion, a future where the sterling name once again stood for something truly meaningful. So what happened to them all? The answers unfolded over the subsequent months, painting a vivid picture of the enduring consequences of character. Alastair Thorne, stripped of his position and his meticulously cultivated reputation, found himself a pariah in the industry he once dominated. His ruthlessness, once admired as ambition, was now seen as a fatal flaw, a moral bankruptcy. He struggled to find work, each door slamming shut in his face, his name becoming synonymous with cold indifference, a living testament to the truth that integrity, once lost, is almost impossible to regain. His ambition ultimately consumed him, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of his own unfeeling actions and the echo of his desperate pleas. Cassian Sterling, disinherited and publicly shamed, tried to leverage his family name, but it now carried the indelible taint of my public disavowal. The golden key he thought he possessed turned out to be made of lead. He drifted aimlessly for a time, squandering the modest inheritance I had left him, enough to live comfortably, but not luxuriously, unable to shake off the entitlement that had defined him. Without the promise of sterling hospitality, he lacked purpose, his arrogance proving to be a crippling burden rather than a useful tool. He became a cautionary tale within the family, a stark reminder that blood ties alone do not guarantee a legacy, nor do they absolve one of moral responsibility. His journey, I hope, will eventually lead him to introspection, but I hold no illusions. Elara Vance, however, blossomed. Her initial shock and disbelief quickly transformed into a quiet determination, a deep sense of purpose. She embraced her new role with an earnestness and passion that was truly inspiring, her kind eyes now shining with a newfound confidence. The Department of Community Relations and Staff Well-being, under her leadership, became a beacon of positive change within sterling hospitality. She initiated robust programs for homeless support, partnering with local charities, ensuring that the hotel became a force for good in the city. She established a comprehensive mentorship program for junior staff, ensuring that no one felt invisible or undervalued, fostering a culture of mutual respect and support. She took to her studies with remarkable aptitude, her inherent kindness translating into insightful and empathetic leadership, proving that true intelligence comes not just from the mind, but from the heart. Elara became the true embodiment of the new sterling hospitality, a company that prioritized people over profit, fostering a culture of genuine care and respect. Her journey was a testament to the idea that true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by the positive impact you have on the lives of others, by the compassion you sow. And what of me? Octavian Sterling. I found a peace I hadn't realized I was missing, a profound sense of purpose renewed. The isolation that had plagued me for years dissipated. Rebuilding Sterling hospitality with a new ethos, one centered on empathy and genuine human connection, became my renewed purpose, a second wind in the twilight of my life. I no longer felt like a lonely emperor in a gilded cage. I was surrounded by people who, like Alara, understood the true meaning of service and compassion, people who saw the value in every individual. My legacy, once a source of disillusionment, now felt real, vibrant, and profoundly meaningful, a testament not just to ambition, but to humanity. The experiment had been painful, revealing the ugly underbelly of human nature, but it had also shown me the incredible beauty and resilience of the human spirit. It had shown me the truth, a truth that ultimately set me free. The universal lesson I carried away from this extraordinary experience is this: true character is revealed in how we treat those who can do nothing for us. It is not in how we flatter the powerful, or how we impress the wealthy, but in the small, unassuming acts of kindness extended to those who are invisible, vulnerable, and seemingly powerless. Wealth and status can mask a multitude of sins, but stripped bare, in the cold light of anonymity, the true measure of a person's heart shines through. My experiment cost me nothing but comfort for a few days, but it revealed everything. It showed me that genuine empathy is the most valuable currency, and that kindness, in its purest form, is the most powerful force for good in the world. I learned my lesson about human nature, a lesson etched into my soul. Our channel is full of stories like this, narratives that delve into the heart of what it means to be human, to test the boundaries of perception, and to uncover truths hidden in plain sight. If you found this story compelling, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into human nature. And tell me, have you ever been surprised by someone's true colors? Tell me your story in the comments below.